When you don't really have another option, I feel like it forces a certain kind of grit through adversity. So you get out and do it, and you do it imperfectly. And what I learned through that is that action is actually what builds evidence, which is what gives you confidence, which is what gets you results.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Hey everybody. So, what if everything you've been told about confidence is backwards? Most of us want to feel ready before we act, but our guest today has discovered that action creates confidence, not the other way around. Makeda Boehm has earned seven figures in tech sales, built a mortgage-free homestead with two kids, and transformed her life multiple times, all by taking imperfect action first and building confidence through evidence, not feelings. Her new book, The Connector Method, Unlock Confidence and Results Through Fast Action, reveals the four-part loop that turns small, imperfect steps into powerful transformation. On this podcast, we're going to be talking about why waiting until you feel ready might be the thing keeping you stuck. And without further ado, Makeda, welcome to our show.
Hi, thank you for having me on, Danielle. I appreciate it.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. Of course. Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. And I love this theory. I mean, a lot of people think and think and think so long before making a decision, but it's kind of the other way around. Make the decision and work out the kinks later on. It stops the delay work. And I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. So it's something we could all learn from.
Absolutely. Yeah, what tends to happen is that people want to wait until they feel ready. And what makes you feel ready, almost counterintuitively, is doing the thing. You get more from taking action and doing the thing versus waiting until you study it or get another accolade or keep just thinking about it. It's taking the action that gets you there.
Understood. Well, hey, you have a great method, and a lot of people are do learn from it tremendously every day. And your book only is just a great way to continue promoting that. That being said, I'd like to talk a little bit about your background and kind of what led you to this. I mean, you had kind of a struggle in your past with homelessness since you were 16, and then you just went through a different journey. Seven figures in tech sales. It must have been quite the tale. What were some of those imperfect actions that led you to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I've talked about, I talk about it on my platform. I was on my own since 16. I did have an unconventional upbringing. I'm from Philadelphia, and I got my GED at 16 actually, and did an alternative senior year with City Year, which is AmeriCorps, which is like the Peace Corps in America. So I was the youngest person in my corps at 17, and I did that actually before college. So just working all the time. When you do it, it's volunteering, but you're working like 50-hour days, 5 days a week. And it was a really great start because then when I went to college at 18, it was it was almost easier than I'm sure for a lot of people because it was like, okay, this is a lot easier. I do class a few times a day and I'm not there 50 hours a week. But
Yeah.
through that, I had to work 3 jobs through college. And it again comes back to what your question is like, what imperfect action? When you don't really have another option, I feel like it forces a certain kind of grit through adversity and just doing. You're not going to have the perfect set of circumstances. You don't have, your parents' couch to fall back on if you're not successful, however you define that, and you don't have another option. So you get out and do it, and you do it imperfectly. And what I learned through that is that action is actually what builds evidence, which is what gives you confidence, which is what gets you results. You can think about doing whatever you want to think about doing. And I'm not opposed to education. I have an MBA. I thought for a very long time I had to get all the accolades to almost prove my worth or prove that I've made it. And what I've learned through any of this is that it's always still about taking fast action, and in the doing it, you that's how you learn. So getting into tech sales, which I talk about, which was 4 years ago, I actually talk about this in my keynote speeches. I had no idea what an account executive was. I didn't know what SaaS meant, which is software as a service. But I looked at the criteria for the job and felt like I could learn it. And that is what I think is the key thing a lot of people wait on, especially when it comes to building careers or building companies and parents. Um, you don't see the exact title that you did before, and a lot of times you don't realize that you've gained these skills in other ways. Like, if I brought up parents, because if you have a 3-year-old, you know conflict resolution, you know negotiation skills. Like, you didn't have to do it as an FBI negotiator. You learned it through experience, through doing. And that is what gives you that evidence to then give you the confidence to say, I can learn this in a more professional capacity. And that's just what I teach, because as I started tech sales, 3 months later, I exceeded quota at 154%. And 4 years later, I've sold over $10 million in software and earned nearly $1 million in commission doing it, with about a $500,000 that I earned last year alone. So I say that to tell people that it is possible. Start messy, because it's through the doing that you gain that confidence, you gain that experience, and then you're able to get those results.
Absolutely. I love that. And kudos to you for, kind of transforming literally everything and turning it into a platform that can help others thrive. It's beautiful. So I'm wondering, kind of about the connector method itself now. It's a four-part method, a loop. So can you tell us a little bit about that and how it works perhaps in your life or your clients' lives?
Absolutely. Great question. What made me think about the connector method is a lot of times people ask me how. They're like, "How did you do that? It must be extraordinary." Or a lot of times people see accomplishments that people make, and they like to be like, well, that is because they did XYZ. And what I've learned just throughout my life, especially with someone like me who arguably did not have a lot of opportunity as we like to conventionally define it, because I think I live in the land of opportunity. I think that I absolutely had a lot of opportunity, just even by virtue of being in America, where I was able to have access to a lot of things. And I know this because I've traveled to over 15 countries. I've been to over 22 schools in 3 continents. So I know that I have a pretty big breadth of understanding, and still only a tiny bit of understanding of all there is to know, like less than 0.001%. But even within that, I've just truly been able to learn that opportunity is what you make it, and that usually not being super comfortable is where your zone of genius can thrive. So, the connector method is really about no matter what, it's a feedback loop. Once you get started, you build evidence, you get confidence, you gain results, then you take another action. But it all starts with action. Especially, I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And when you see children learning how to walk, learning how to talk, they aren't doing it perfectly. They start messy, right? But we celebrate them because we know what it takes. And I feel like a lot of times when we get older, we tend to get so much more critical. What will people think of me? Why should I turn on the camera? What if I stumble over my words? What will people say? And it's like kids, they just go in and they're free and they do it and they do it messy. And then they gain evidence that, hey, I took one step, so now I can take three. Now I can run. That gives them the confidence to then have the outcome to keep going. Now I can climb. Now I can do something else. I've learned how to master these legs and I've said one word. Now I have evidence that I can say a word because mommy and daddy nodded at me. So clearly they're starting to understand what I'm saying. So now I have that evidence. So now I have the confidence to say a sentence. And that is literally the feedback loop that happens again and again.
I love that, and I like how you also kept relating it to your children as well, because you're right. I mean, you could learn a lot from what they're doing, and they're learning to walk like you mentioned. And thank you for walking us through that. I think it's a good taste for what the audience can expect from the book. But if I remember correctly, you're still in the process of creating it. Is that true?
Absolutely. So it has been a labor of love. It's been a labor of evolution. I decided to start it, right? Like I'm starting it messy. I'm taking action. I fully plan for it to be out by the end of this year or next year. And the reason why is I'll be honest, I thought about it 2 months ago. And
Mhm.
this came from me starting a podcast in May, at the end of May. I had no idea about a podcast. I didn't listen to podcasts. I didn't even really understand what the medium was, but I had started a newsletter in March. I read newsletters, I like them. I'm like, I'm going to start one. And then I saw that there was a button on there to make it audio. And I was like, oh, should I do a podcast? And 2 weeks later, I started a podcast and I'm on like episode 30,
Wow.
3 months later.
Okay.
And it's the perfect example of I didn't know, but I did some research. And it's why, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. I talk about AI a lot because I do feel like it allows you to start pretty quickly, and that is the perfect example. So as I'm starting talking and I started a podcast, I'm like, I should write a book, and that is how it happens.
Wow, that's awesome. A lot of people think about podcasting like after the fact their book, so they can promote the book, or maybe they appear on podcasts. But it's cool to know it kind of came the other way around, and I'm sure a lot of it was inspired by the people that you talk to on the show too. I'm sure there's a lot of insights that all came together for the writing of the book. All that said, though, you did mention AI, and that was my next question. How does AI play a role in accelerating the action and evidence-based process? Is there a certain algorithm people can use to help them weigh their decisions or plan it out? Or tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I actually started Seed and Society. That's the company I founded and the podcast based on the AI era because I work in tech and just seeing how fast it's changing everything, I dove right in. And this isn't from like a super techie person. Like I'm in tech sales. I'm not like coding all day or into the algorithm so much. But that's the cool thing about AI. It bridges it for everybody and it allows you to start so much faster. Instead of me having to go to five different coaches or figure out all of the things that I needed for editing and uploading and
Right.
putting something out, I'm able to just type that into ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude. I use them for different things, but or Gemini and being able to have almost kind of like an internal team. I will say that AI can only take you so far. It is very much like a feedback loop. It gives you back what you feed into it, and you do need to know how to prompt. And there's whole courses on that. There's whole, like, everyone's talking about it. But it is a great start for you to take action. There's kind of no excuse now. You can't be like, oh, I'm waiting back for the call from this person, or I don't know what I don't know here. You literally have this amazing tool that you can go into and query and say, hey, I want to start a podcast. What software is great for that? I like, what is a podcast? Like, what do I need to do? It's how I even got to like Podmatch. It was like, "Oh, you wanna start bringing guests on?" Because my first 13 episodes were, like, solo, and I was like, "I like to talk, but this is a lot of talking." Like, there's only so much like, so far I can take it, and
course.
then it gave me these suggestions for different platforms where you could meet like-minded people or like-minded things, so I just really um, tell people that you can absolutely use AI to enhance whatever it is that you're doing, but it cannot replace you. It can't replace your thoughts, your experiences, the things that make you you, but it can absolutely help you with taking action so you can build that evidence library so that you can build confidence and get the outcomes or results that you want.
Understood. And I do like what you said there. It is like a tool, you can't rely on it solely for anything. It's you got to utilize it in the correct way, know how to utilize it. So, yeah, I appreciate that. And it's a great way to say, like, there's no more excuses. It's an immediate answer to any question you might have. So just do it, right?
Yeah.
Perfect stuff. So transitioning a little bit into the writing process itself. But since we're on AI, I'm sure you use a little bit of AI for like the planning of the book, maybe like some research. But then of course you had your own writing process too. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, it's really great. I use AI as a sounding board. I'm very transparent about how I use AI. I did actually write like a book under a pen name with AI earlier this year. It was like a romance novel. I put it on, and it was like, okay, this won't work. I had to go in and extensively edit so many things that I might as well just written the book from
Right.
scratch myself. So, that part, but what I have been doing with this book is now taking all the conversations I have with people, taking, like, conversations I'll have on LinkedIn or posing questions, and then what I plan on doing with my keynote crowd as well, and how I talk in my speeches, and putting that in the book, because what I
Mhm.
think is that once people realize the actions that they've taken in their lives, and the confidence that they have gained and the evidence that they got from that and then the outcomes they got from that, it's such a telling story that you can see the connector method in this loop in everyone's lives. That's why I start with the story of babies and children, because no matter what someone's doing, they were always new at it at one point. Even if you studied it or went to college for it, even that, the first day you started work, anyone who has done anything in theory and then actually took the action of doing it realized that they're very rarely the same thing. You can know intellectually what you need to do, but what you need to do and what you can do or what you do
Right.
usually has some kind of gap. Right? Like there's a little bit of a bridge. And that's why it's so easy to tell people how, like when you watch professional sports, it's so easy to tell your team like how they're not doing what they need to be doing on the field, even though if you were the one in the field, the ball wouldn't even get close to the end zone, right? It's that same idea that it's very easy to point fingers about how something should be done when you haven't actually done it. And that is why I am such a big proponent for fast action. Just getting in there, doing it messy because it will teach you way faster than theory. And mistakes actually teach you even more than going into something new and being instantly successful at it. Because then when you don't do well, it like affects your whole self-worth and it dents your confidence so much. But if you go in it where, hey, I had some lessons, I had mistakes, I pivoted from that, and now I have like unshakable confidence because I know that I can come back from lessons.
Yeah, kind of like I've been there, done that. I don't need to be fearful, and like I have this strength now from it. So definitely
Yeah.
something to keep into consideration. I love that. So a little bit more on the writing process. I mean, if you're advocating for imperfect action, I'm sure there must be a level of balancing perfectionism in your writing with just getting the book done. I'm wondering if that's kind of how your method went. Did you just have like a very rough draft to start and then go back and edit a bunch, or did it kind of flow more naturally? Let me know about that because I'm sure that that's a big part to play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a big thing for me is I'm always an outline girl.
Mm.
I like if I'm writing a 10-page research paper or if I'm writing a book, I need to have a very clear outline. So I know where this is going, so I stay on topic, so I know how many chapters I plan on having. Some of the chapters I'm noticing it can expand a little bit more. I'm like, maybe should this be another chapter or should I pull this back? But making sure that I'm very consistent within the subject matter. And then, like I said, I do really want this book to be very story based and not just Makeda story based, right? Like I have my stories, but what I think really pulls people in and what shows people, because the whole point of this book is to show people that they can absolutely have the life of their dreams, whatever that is. Not subscribing it to what someone says the life of your dreams is, but when you take action and you gain evidence, that evidence also points you to authenticity. Hey, I did this thing and I didn't really like it. I studied it. I thought I would love medicine, for example. I thought I would love law, but I'm actually doing it and it doesn't make me happy. That is where you now have the confidence to pivot, right? Because instead of wasting all that time thinking about doing the thing and now you feel like sunk costs, it's like, actually, I did it. I don't like it. So now I can go and create the life of the dreams that I want because I'm not wasting time on I should have did XYZ. So that's why I really want in my writing process to get stories from other people who are able to now identify this loop. And that's what I get with my clients. That's what I'm working on because I want everyone to be able to see themselves in this. And it doesn't have to be some crazy, extraordinary, amazing story. Like, no one roots for that person all the time, right? Like, okay, great. You did that, right? Like, I want it to be everyday stories so that every person knows that they can take fast action today.
Absolutely. I love that. And you made a really good point there. Nobody wants to hear a story about everything going well. They need to
Yeah.
learn from their mistakes too. So, yeah, really good advice there. So, if somebody's interested in getting to learn a little bit more and perhaps getting more in tune with everything that you've been completing, what's the best links to head to and to learn about the connector method?
Yeah, absolutely. So seedandsociety.com. So that's seed and A&D society.com. When you also look it up, if it's on socials, it's the ampersand. And but that is a really great place to start. I am also building out makedaboehm.com, but it'll feed into that same ecosystem. I have a newsletter, that Seed and Society newsletter, that is really great for, again, learning how to take action, building confidence, and getting those results. So I really just talk about that everywhere within my ecosystem. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn at Makeda Boehm. And yeah, I have some cool little freebies for people like downloads because a lot of this ties into monetization infrastructure. And what that means is how to make money from what you know and what you love. I am still in corporate and I am a founder. And what I really am passionate about is people being able to build asset based wealth, people being able to build wealth and multiple income streams without sacrificing anything. So I do have like a really cool guide that's 5 systems to make money from what you know. And it's a really great way to take fast action very quickly, not make any crazy drastic changes, and just build another income stream while you're living your life or playing with your kids or like me on the homestead. Um, and existing. So definitely check that out. And I'm
Yeah.
always open to questions. And if anyone has stories about how they took fast action and it turned into great results, I always love to hear them.
Yeah, I love that. So offering up the floor for our audience to, not only check out your content, but share their own stories as well. I love that. And
Yeah.
you made a great point. This kind of work could, this kind of framework can apply to anybody, regardless of what your situation might be or, where you're at in life, because at the end of the day, everybody has to make decisions. why dwell on them? So I love it. I'm wondering as we begin to wrap up today, then, if you have any last writing tips to the authors out there today who might be wanting to follow in your footsteps. What's something that you wish you knew when you first got started that you think could benefit many others?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just comes back to exactly the connector method.
Of
Take
course.
fast action. Do it messy. Like 80, one of my favorite quotes is imperfect action is better than perfect inaction,
Right.
right? Like you have these thoughts in your head, put them down, put it out in the world. You can always refine later. You can do a second book later, but having that book in your heart for a decade, 2 decades until you never release it, like what do you have to lose? The worst people can tell you is no, which puts you in the same situation you're in now. And I always say stuff like embarrassment is a low vibrational frequency. In the words of Dr. Seuss, those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind. There's
I love
someone
that
who
quote.
needs your stories. Exactly. There's someone who needs your stories. There's someone who wants to hear your voice, and every person, if you're doing it for just one person, which is what I do, then that means you can have an impact. So just start.
Just start. I love it. Yeah, I mean it's probably the most basic piece of advice, but for you in particular, it's grounded in theory and framework. You know what I mean? So it's great. Amazing stuff. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been a really insightful episode. And to all of our listeners, we're going to have links in the description box of this podcast today. So you can go ahead and click on over as soon as we're finished. And Makeda, thank you so much for coming on. I love these theories. I love your connector method. I think it's useful to anybody. Again, like you said, whether you're a parent trying to build a career or an entrepreneur afraid to start or someone waiting for the perfect moment to write their book. It's a great inspiration and you're evidence of it. So
Thank you.
thank you. All right, and everybody else, remember that you too don't need to feel confident to take action. You take on action to build confidence. So we'll see you next time on the episode of Authors on Mission podcast. And in the meantime, keep connecting, keep acting, and keep building evidence of what's possible. Have a great day, everybody. That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.